In this lecture, we are going to dive into one of the most powerful and commonly used control structures in Java, the for loop and the for each loop. Loops are essential in programming because they allow us to automate repetitive tasks and handle large amount of data efficiently. In the last lecture, we have seen how we can do looping with the while and do while loop. In this lecture, we will explore how the for and for each loop works and how they differ from each other and when you should each one of them. So what's a for loop? The for loop is a fundamental control structure in Java which is used to execute block of code repeatedly for known number of iterations. It gives you complete control over the loop. You can define the starting point, the condition for the continuation, and step size. And this is the typical syntax for the for loop. For, initialization, condition, step size. And within this flat braces, we write the block of code which we want to be executed repeatedly. So here, initialization is the component which is used to initialize the loop variable. The condition checks if the loop should continue. Step size modifies the loop variable after each iteration. So let's look into an example. Here we have a for loop. We say for int I equals 1, I less than or equals 5, I plus plus. And within the body of the loop, we just print the value of I. Let's run this first, get the output, and then we will understand how it works. So as we run this, we get the output, the values of I printed from 1 to 5. Let's understand how this works. The loop starts with the value I equals 1. It checks for the condition if I is less than or equal to 5. It is true. If true, the loop executes. After executing this block once, it increments the value of I by 1. And that's what we have here, I plus plus. Now again it checks for the condition whether I is less than or equal to 5. It is still less, so the loop executes. So the execution of the loop continues until the value of I exceeds 5. Which means once the value of I reaches 5, the execution of the loop stops. And that's why we get the value of I printed from 1 to 5. What is a for each loop? The for each loop is a simplified version of the loop used to iterate over the arrays or collections. Here we don't need to manage the arrays using the index. The typical syntax of a for each loop is like this. For, data type, element, colon, collection. And then we have the body of the loop. Let's look into an example. Here we have an array, names, and this array contains 3 elements, Alice, Bob, and Charlie. Now let's print the names using the for each loop. Here we say for string name colon names system.out.println name. Let's run this, get the output, and then understand how it works. As we run it here, we get the names printed. Alice, Bob, and Charlie. So let's understand how it works. The loop automatically assigns each element from the array to the variable name. The loop executes once for each element in the array. So here no need to track indices or increment values. Java handles it for you. So let's look into some of the key differences between the for and for each loop. The for loop is suitable when you need to modify the loop variable or know the index. And for each loop is suitable when you only need to access the elements. The for loop is more flexible. It allows complete control over the loop. The for each loop works only for the collections and arrays. The for loop is a bit complex but very powerful. The for each loop is simple and easy to use. When we use the for loop with a collection or an array, it allows the modification of the elements of this array. Whereas we cannot modify the elements of an array when we use the for each loop. So this brings us a question, when to use the for loop and when to use the for each loop. When you need to modify the loop variable, or when you want to skip certain iterations or terminate early using the break or continue, or when you need to know the index of the element, in all such cases we go for a for loop. But when you need only to access the elements in the collection or an array, when you want to write a clean and readable code, when you don't need to modify the elements, in all such cases we can go for the for each loop. So let's look into an example here. We have an integer array, numbers, with values 1 to 5. let's iterate this array using the for loop. So we say for int I equals 0, I less than numbers dot length I plus plus. And within the loop body, we say numbers of I equals numbers of I multiplied by 2. If you look into this for loop, we say int I equals 0. We initialize the value of I with 0. Then I less than numbers dot length. Here the numbers array has a length of 5. So which means here the value of I should be less than 5. And I plus plus. So every time the loop executes, it's incremented by 1. And within the body, if you look at it, we say numbers of I equals numbers of I into 2. This means on the right hand side, we multiply each element of the array by 2 and assign it to the same element. So typically, we are modifying the value of the array. So when the loop executes for the first time, the value of I is 0. So the first element from the array is taken and multiplied by 2. And this continues until the value of I is 4, which refers to the last element of the array. And when all the elements are processed by the for loop, it finishes. Now let's print the value of each element of the array using this for loop. So again we can say int I equals 0, I less than numbers dot length I plus plus, then system.out.println of numbers of I. And when we print this, we get the output 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. This is because we have multiplied each of the array element by 2. But typically here, this part of printing the elements of the array can be done with the for each loop. Instead of using this for loop here, we can replace this with a for each loop. So we can typically say for int number colon numbers system.out.println of number. And let's run this, we get the same output. And here, using this for each loop, we will not be able to modify the element of the array because we don't have the index of each element of the array. So the typical for loop is used to modify the array, and the for each loop is used to display the modified array. So let's look into some of the common mistakes which the developers do while using the for and for each loop. And also, we will look into the best practices that we need to follow while using these loops. Generally, developers try to modify an array or collection using the for each loop and forgetting to update a loop variable in a for loop, leading to an infinite loop. This is one of the common mistakes which developers at the early stage do. Using a for each loop when you need to skip elements or terminate early is another mistake which commonly we can see with inexperienced developers. This is not possible because we can't get the index of the element of the array. Let's look into some of the best practices which we have to follow. Use a for loop when you need complete control over the loop. Use a for each loop for cleaner and more readable code when you only need to just access the elements. Prefer enhanced for each loop for iterating over collections whenever possible. So in this lecture we have learnt what for loop and for each loop are. When you need to modify elements, control loop execution or track index, we go for a for loop. And it is highly flexible. And when you only need to access elements in an array or a collection, we go for a for each loop, and it is not that highly flexible. Mastering the for and for each loop is crucial for writing efficient and clean Java code. Understanding when to use each loop will make your code more readable, optimized and easy to maintain. We will be typically using this for and for each loop throughout all these courses. By the end of this career track, you will become a master of using for and for each loop and will clearly know when to use which one. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. I would love to hear from you, your thought on this tutorial. Please leave your comments at the bottom. Please subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching and see you again soon.